First of all, let me share the climate in Washington, D.C. on immigration, because to understand what we want to do and what I would support, it's important to understand the climate. There is, and you've seen it, a large faction, and I will tell you I'm part of this, who wants to see us fix the DACA problem. We need to fix it. There is a large faction, and I'm part of this, who feels like we need better border security. And interestingly, these two factions are finding some common ground and saying, hey, I'll tell you what, I'll work with you on DACA, but I want you to work with me on border security. And the DACA people are saying, hey, I'll work with you on border security, but come work with us on DACA. It's setting up a framework for something that to happen that has really needed to happen in the worst way. Now, what I think is very important, and where I'm spending a lot of my time on this, is I mentioned I support both of these pillars, but there's some pillars of immigration in between all of this that are also extremely broken and need attention. And there is no better case than just our overall visa program. Let me talk specifically for a minute about our migrant workers. In this state, I'm approached frequently, probably more than anything else, by those in industries dependent on this migrant workforce. People who pick cherries, people who agriculture, our ski resorts, our hospitality industry. We have a real legitimate need for a workforce that cannot be found here in the United States. Likewise, we have a workforce who is willing to come legally, work hard, pay taxes, and in many cases they want to go back home, right, when they're done. We've done a terrible job of matching these two things up together. In many ways, I think we have to own much of the problem with immigration, because we've allowed a situation to flourish where we all kind of wink and nod that we need these jobs, right? And we want these jobs filled. But then we have a very broken way of getting people legal to pay taxes, to come in and work, and then go home if they want to go home. So it's very important that this is also a pillar of fixing immigration, is that we deal with that. Now here's an idea I think you're going to love. Who would you prefer to decide how many visas we need? The federal government or the state of Utah? Right? Wouldn't it be amazing if we could convince the federal government that we know how many of these workers we need in our state? That would be amazing, right? Because they don't know how many people we need with the turkey farms. They don't need how many people we need at the ski resort. We do. Now mixed into that are all of these other visas. So we have visas for highly skilled workers. We have visas for students and things like that. And likewise, I think it's very important that we make wise decisions about who we want in our country, and then we make that process as remarkably simple and easy as we can. Amen. Yeah, and so that's what I would like to see, and that's what I'll support with immigration. Now, let me talk about process for just a minute. If you go back to the tax reform, there's something very, very important that happened, which is the House passed a bill, the Senate passed a bill, and they were different, right? So what happened? They came together, we found our common ground, and we were able to get one bill through that was actually a better bill than either the House bill or the Senate bill. We all agree with that. Senate looks at that and say, well, this is a better bill. House looks at it and says, it's a much better bill. The process of getting immigration reform through probably is going to look like this. The House, if we can pass a bill, will pass a bill that is more conservative. It's the nature of the House, the personality of the House. We're dominantly Republican. We can push something through that's far more conservative. The Senate is going to pass a bill, if they can get one through, that is more moderate. Because of the 60-vote rule, they need roughly, depends on how many Republicans they lose, a dozen senators, Democratic senators, to go with theirs. Guess what? That's going to produce a more moderate bill. My caution and warning is, don't get too worked up if you don't like the Senate bill. It eventually has to pass the House. Don't get too worked up if you don't like the House bill. It eventually has to pass the Senate. So if we're going to be successful, we've got to take a more moderate bill that will come out of the Senate. We're going to take a more conservative bill that will come out of the House and find the common ground to get one bill through. One of the reasons I share this with you is I very likely will be voting on a bill that's not perfect, but I want to get it out of the House, right? And many people kind of feel like, oh, you're voting on something, that's the final thing, we should judge you on that product. No, just know that there's some holes in the bill that seems to be emerging in the House right now. It's not perfect. I want it out of the House so that we can start having that productive dialogue. Now, one of the big problems that we've got with immigration right now is we were headed to a head where I thought this was going to be done in early March. What happened? Two things. The Senate couldn't get a bill through. Took a lot of wind out of the sails. The DACA deadline got relaxed. Took a lot of wind out of the sails. It's not good, but we work well on deadlines. So you can see why it's really important for the Senate to get something out, even if it's not perfect, is it keeps the process moving. So I want to solve DACA. I think we owe it to these kids to solve DACA. I want stronger border security. We do need to secure our borders. And by the way, it's not just our southern border. It's our northern border. It's our airports and our seaports. Now you've noticed something. I haven't said the wall. And let me tell you why. Many of us want border security and want us to be blind to not prescribe an answer, but actually go find the best answer. Does that make sense? And so we really, when we look at border security, I would prefer that we say, what gives us the best border security? It may very well be that parts of the border, a wall, is our best border security. It may very well be there are parts where it's not. Imagine this, a wall out in the middle of the desert, not manning that wall, how are they going to get drugs across? They're going to get a drone, and they're going to fly them across, right? So that's why I think it's really important that we not get bogged down in what is the answer for border security, rather that we commit to better border security.